My name is Minnie Washington, and I'm 73 years old. Last Wednesday evening, my children, all three of them, came to my hospital room and told me they decided I wasn't worth keeping alive. "Mom, the doctors say you need a kidney transplant," my oldest son Curtis said, standing at the foot of my hospital bed. "The cost is $450,000. That's money we don't have. And frankly, money we don't want to spend on a transplant for someone your age." I stared at my children in disbelief. Curtis was 48. My daughter Geneva was 45. My youngest son Porter was 42. All three of them were successful professionals with good jobs and comfortable lives. All three of them were alive because I'd raised them alone after their father died, working 2 jobs to put them through college. And now they were standing in my hospital room, telling me I wasn't worth $450,000. "We've talked to the doctors," Geneva said, her voice cold and businesslike. "They said if you don't get the transplant, you have maybe 6 months to live, maybe less. So we've decided that instead of spending nearly $500,000 on a risky surgery, we're going to let nature take its course." "Let nature take its course," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "You mean you're going to let me die?" "Mom, you're 73 years old," Porter said, as if that explained everything. "You've had a good life, and honestly, we have our own families to think about, our own children to put through college. We can't spend our inheritance on a kidney transplant that might not even work." Your inheritance. That's what this was about. My children wanted me to die so they could inherit my money without having to spend any of it on keeping me alive. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom, don't be dramatic," Curtis said. "We're being practical. You're old, you're sick. A transplant is expensive and risky. It makes sense to." "Get out," I screamed, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. "Get out of my hospital room. Get out now." My children looked at each other. Then Geneva shrugged. "Fine, we'll leave. But Mom, you need to understand, we're not paying for a transplant. So you can either accept that and spend your last few months with some dignity, or you can die alone and bitter. Your choice." They walked out of my room without looking back. I lay in that hospital bed, crying, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. My children, the Bobbies I'd given birth to, the kids I'd raised alone after their father died, the young adults I'd put through college by working 60-hour weeks, had just told me I wasn't worth saving. They thought I would die quietly and forgotten. They thought I'd just accept their decision and fade away without making a fuss. They were wrong. The next morning, I made noise they couldn't escape. I did something that ensured my children would never forget me, would never be able to move on with their comfortable lives, would never be able to enjoy the inheritance they were so eager to collect. But to understand what I did and why it destroyed my children's lives so completely, you need to understand the whole story. You need to know about the years of neglect that led to that moment in the hospital. You need to know what my children had been doing behind my back for years. And you need to know about the will I'd written just 3 months before I got sick, the will my children didn't know existed yet. 3 years ago, I was a healthy, active 70-year-old woman. I lived alone in a small house I'd owned for 40 years, the house where I'd raised my 3 children after my husband Raymond died in a car accident when Curtis was 8, Geneva was 5, and Porter was 2. Raymond's death had been devastating. We had no life insurance, minimal savings, and 3 young children to feed. So I'd done what I had to do. I got 2 jobs. During the day, I worked as a secretary at a law firm. At night and on weekends, I cleaned office buildings. For 15 years, I worked 60 to 70 hours a week. I missed parent-teacher conferences because I was working. I missed school plays and sports games because I was working. I barely slept because between 2 jobs and raising 3 kids alone, there wasn't time. But I made sure my children had everything they needed. I made sure they went to good schools. I made sure they had clothes and food and a roof over their heads. And when they graduated high school and wanted to go to college, I made sure they could go, even though it meant taking out loans I'd spend the next 20 years paying off. All 3 of my children went to college. Curtis became a corporate lawyer. Geneva became a doctor. Porter became an accountant. They all got good jobs, bought nice houses, got married, had children of their own. And they forgot about me. Oh, they'd visit on holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Mother's Day. They'd bring their families and we'd have dinner, and they'd tell me about their successful lives. But beyond those obligatory visits, I rarely heard from them. I'd call Curtis to ask how his kids were doing, and he'd be short with me. "I'm busy, Mom. Can we talk later?" Later never came. I'd call Geneva to see if she wanted to have lunch, and she'd say she was too busy with her medical practice and her own family. I'd call Porter just to chat, and he'd make excuses to get off the phone within 5 minutes. I told myself it was fine. My children were busy. They had their own lives. I should be happy they were successful and didn't need me anymore. But deep down, I was lonely. I'd spent my entire adult life raising them, sacrificing for them, putting them first. And now that they were grown, they had no time for me. 2 years ago, something happened that changed everything. My mother, my children's grandmother, died and left me an inheritance of $1.2 million. My mother had been a frugal woman who'd saved and invested wisely her entire life. When she died at 92, she left everything to me, her only child. The money came as a complete shock. I'd had no idea my mother had accumulated that much wealth. Suddenly, at 71 years old, I had more money than I'd ever had in my life. I paid off my mortgage. I paid off the last of the student loans I'd taken out for my children's college educations. And I started thinking about what to do with the rest. I decided to talk to my children about it. Maybe with this money, we could spend more time together. Maybe I could help them with their own children's college funds. Maybe this inheritance could bring us closer. So I invited all 3 of my children to my house for Sunday dinner. I told them about the inheritance. "Mom, that's wonderful," Curtis said, but I could see the calculating look in his eyes. "So what are you planning to do with the money?" "Well, I thought we could talk about that," I said. "I'd like to help with my grandchildren's education. Maybe I could set up college funds for each of them. And I thought maybe we could take a family vacation together, all of us. I've never been able to afford something like that before." My children looked at each other. Geneva spoke first. "Mom, that's very generous, but you should really think about your own future. You're 71. You need to make sure you have enough money for retirement, for medical expenses, for long-term care if you need it." "I have enough," I assured her. "After paying off my debts, I still have about $1 million left. That's more than enough for my needs. I'd like to share some of it with you and my grandchildren." "Actually, Mom," Porter said carefully, "Geneva's right. You should hold on to that money. You never know what might happen. Medical expenses can be really high when you get older." "But I want to help you," I said, confused. "I want to do something for my grandchildren." "We appreciate that," Curtis said. "But honestly, Mom, we're doing fine financially. We don't need help with college funds. What we think you should do is keep the money safe for yourself. In fact, maybe you should talk to a financial advisor about setting up a trust or something. You know, to protect the money and make sure it's handled properly when you're not around anymore." I realized what my children were really saying. They wanted me to preserve the inheritance so they could inherit it themselves someday. They didn't want me spending it on vacations or college funds. They wanted it kept safe so it would eventually become theirs. "I see," I said quietly. "So you don't want me to spend any of the money?" "We just want you to be smart about it," Geneva said. "You worked hard your whole life, Mom. You deserve to be financially secure in your retirement. Don't waste the money on things that aren't necessary." That dinner ended awkwardly. I didn't bring up the inheritance again. But I started paying attention to how my children talked about money around me. And I noticed something disturbing. They talked about when Mom dies, and when we inherit as if it were a sure thing. As if my inheritance was already theirs and I was just holding it temporarily. 1 year ago, I had a minor health scare. I fainted at the grocery store and was taken to the emergency room. The doctors ran tests and determined I had low blood pressure and mild anemia. Nothing serious, just a reminder that I was getting older and needed to take better care of myself. But that incident prompted my children to have a conversation with me about my future living situation. All three of them came to my house for this conversation. They sat me down in my own living room and told me they thought I should consider moving into a nursing home. "Mom, you live alone," Curtis said. "What if you fall and can't get up? What if you have another fainting spell and no one's there to help you?" "I'm fine," I protested. "I've lived in this house for 40 years. I'm not moving into a nursing home." "We're not saying you have to move right now," Geneva said in her doctor voice, calm and reasonable. "We're just saying you should start thinking about it. Maybe visit some facilities, see what's available." "I don't want to live in a nursing home," I said firmly. "I want to stay in my own house." "But that's not practical," Porter said. "You're 72 years old. You can't maintain this house by yourself. And what if your health gets worse? You need to be somewhere where there are people who can help you." "I can hire someone to help me if I need it," I said. "That's expensive," Curtis pointed out. "Wouldn't it make more sense to move somewhere where care is already provided?" We argued about this for an hour. Finally, I agreed to at least look at some nursing homes, just to appease them. But after my children left, I realized something. They weren't really worried about my safety or my health. They were worried about me spending my inheritance. If I stayed in my house, I might spend money on home modifications or in-home care. If I moved to a nursing home, my house could be sold and the proceeds added to the inheritance they were expecting. A nursing home would also be cheaper than private care, leaving more money for them to inherit. My children wanted me warehoused in a nursing home so they could preserve as much of my inheritance as possible. I didn't move to a nursing home, but I started keeping a closer eye on how my children were treating me, and I didn't like what I saw. 6 months ago, I started feeling tired all the time. At first, I thought it was just normal aging, but the fatigue got worse. I started having trouble concentrating. My ankles swelled up. I felt nauseous frequently. Finally, I went to my doctor. He ran blood tests and referred me to a specialist. 2 weeks later, I got the diagnosis: chronic kidney disease, stage 4. My kidneys were failing. The nephrologist, the kidney specialist, explained my options. "Mrs. Washington, your kidneys are functioning at less than 20% capacity. You have 2 options, dialysis or a kidney transplant. Dialysis will keep you alive, but your quality of life won't be good. A transplant would be better, but it's expensive and risky, especially at your age." "How much does a transplant cost?" I asked. "Between $400,000 and $500,000, the doctor said. "And there's no guarantee you'd get a donor kidney. The waiting list is long, and at your age, you're not a priority candidate. Your best bet would be a living donor, someone who voluntarily donates one of their kidneys to you." I thought about my 3 children. They were all healthy. Any one of them could donate a kidney to me. I called Curtis first. "Curtis, I have something important to tell you. I've been diagnosed with kidney failure. The doctors say I need a transplant." "Oh," Curtis said. There was a long pause. That's serious, Mom. What are you going to do?" "The doctor said my best option is a living donor," I said. "Curtis, would you consider being tested to see if you're a match?" Another long pause. "Mom, I don't think I can do that. I have a family to think about. What if something goes wrong with the surgery? What if I have complications? I can't take that risk." "Curtis, people donate kidneys safely all the time," I said. "The risk is very low." "I'm sorry, Mom," Curtis said. "I just can't. Have you asked Geneva or Porter?" I called Geneva next. She was a doctor. Surely she'd understand the medical situation and be willing to help. "Mom, I'm sorry about your diagnosis," Geneva said when I told her. "But I can't donate a kidney. I'm a surgeon. If something went wrong with the donation surgery, it could affect my ability to operate. I can't risk my career." "But Geneva, you're my daughter," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm asking you to save my life." "I understand that," Geneva said. "But you're 73. Even with a transplant, how many more years would you realistically have? 5, 10. Is it worth me risking my career for that?" I hung up on her. I called Porter last. already knowing what he'd say. "Mom, I want to help," Porter said. "But I have 2 kids in private school and a mortgage. If I took time off work for the donation, surgery, and recovery, it would put a real financial strain on my family. I'm sorry, but I can't do it." None of my children would donate a kidney to save my life. I was devastated, but I wasn't completely surprised. My children had been showing me for years that I wasn't a priority to them. This was just the most extreme example. 3 months ago, I was sitting in my kitchen thinking about my situation. I had kidney disease that would eventually kill me without treatment. I had $1.2 million in the bank, and I had 3 children who wouldn't lift a finger to help me but were eagerly waiting to inherit my money when I died. That's when I decided to change my will. I called my lawyer, a young woman named Opal Green, who worked at the same law firm where I'd been a secretary for 15 years before I retired. "Opal, I need to update my will," I told her, "and I need your absolute discretion. My children cannot know about this." "Of course," Opal said. "What changes do you want to make?" I told her my plan. Opal was shocked at first, but when I explained the full situation, my children refusing to donate kidneys, their obsession with my inheritance, the years of neglect, she understood. "Mrs. Washington, are you sure about this?" Opal asked. "This is going to destroy your relationship with your children." "What relationship?" I asked bitterly. "My children see me as a bank account, not a mother. They're waiting for me to die so they can collect their inheritance. Well, I'm going to make sure they regret that." Over the next 2 weeks, Opal helped me write a new will. When we were done, I signed it in front of 2 witnesses and put it in a safe deposit box at my bank. My children had no idea I'd changed my will. As far as they knew, my original will, written 15 years ago, was still in effect. That will split my estate equally among my 3 children. But the new will was very, very different. And when my children found out about it, well, that's when I made the noise they couldn't escape. 3 weeks ago, my kidney function dropped below 15%. My doctor said I needed to start dialysis immediately or I'd die within weeks. I called my children and told them I needed to have a family meeting. They all came to my house, Curtis, Geneva, and Porter. They sat in my living room and I told them the situation. "The doctors say I need to start dialysis or get a transplant soon, or I'll die," I explained. "I've been on the transplant waiting list for 3 months, but the wait could be years, and I don't have years." "So what are you going to do?" Geneva asked. "I'm going to buy a kidney," I said. My children stared at me. "What?" Curtis said. "Mom, that's illegal." "Not in other countries," I said. "There are legal kidney markets in some places. I've been researching it. I can go to India or the Philippines and buy a kidney from a living donor for about $50,000. Then I'd come back here for the transplant surgery, which would cost another $400,000. Total cost, $450,000. "That's insane," Porter said. "Mom, you're 73. You can't travel to India for an organ transplant." "Why not?" I asked. "I'm dying. This is my only option." "Because it's dangerous and expensive and, frankly, not worth it," Geneva said bluntly. "Mom, even if you got the transplant, you'd only have a few more years. Is it really worth spending nearly $500,000 for that?" "To me it is," I said. "It's my money, and I want to spend it staying alive." "But it's our inheritance," Curtis blurted out, then looked embarrassed. There it was, the truth. My children didn't want me to spend the money on a transplant because they wanted to inherit it. "So you want me to die so you can have my money?" I asked quietly. "That's not what I said," Curtis protested. "I'm just saying it's a lot of money for a risky procedure that might not work. Wouldn't it be better to save that money for other things?" "Like your inheritance?" I asked. My children looked uncomfortable. "This is ridiculous," Geneva said. "Mom, we're not going to support you spending $500,000 on a transplant. You're being selfish and short-sighted." "I'm being selfish," I repeated, stunned. "I'm dying and I want to stay alive, and that makes me selfish." "You're not thinking about your family," Porter said. You're not thinking about your grandchildren. That money could pay for their college educations. Instead, you want to waste it on a transplant that probably won't work anyway. I looked at my 3 children. The Bobbies I'd raised alone, the kids I'd put through college while working 2 jobs, the adults who now had comfortable lives because of my sacrifices. And I realized they genuinely didn't care if I lived or died. They just cared about the money. "Get out," I said. "All of you, get out of my house." They left, and I sat in my empty house and cried. 2 weeks ago, I collapsed at home. A neighbor found me and called an ambulance. I was rushed to the hospital in kidney failure. The doctors stabilized me and put me on dialysis, but they said my condition was critical. I needed a transplant soon or I'd die. I was in the hospital for 5 days. During that time, none of my children visited me, not one. On the 5th day, all 3 of them showed up together. They came to my hospital room and stood around my bed looking uncomfortable. "Mom, we've been talking," Curtis said, "and we've decided we need to have a serious conversation about your medical care." That's when they told me they'd decided I wasn't worth saving. That's when Curtis said the transplant cost $450,000 and they didn't want to spend that much money on someone my age. That's when Geneva said they were going to let nature take its course. That's when Porter said they had their own families to think about and couldn't spend their inheritance on keeping me alive. That's when I screamed at them to get out. And that's when I decided to make sure my children would never, ever forget me. After my children left that Wednesday evening, I lay in my hospital bed thinking. I was 73 years old and dying of kidney failure. I had maybe 6 months to live, maybe less. My children had made it clear they wouldn't help me and were actively hoping I'd die soon so they could inherit my money. But I had one card left to play, one thing my children didn't know about. The new will. I picked up my phone and called Opal Green, my lawyer. "Opal, it's Minnie Washington," I said. "I need you to do something for me. Tomorrow morning, I need you to send copies of my new will to each of my children. I want them to know exactly what they're going to inherit after I die." "Are you sure?" Opal asked. "Mrs. Washington, this is going to cause a lot of upset." "I'm sure," I said. "They think I'm going to die quietly and let them take my money. I want them to know the truth while I'm still alive to see their reactions." "Okay," Opal said. "I'll send the copies first thing tomorrow morning." I hung up and smiled. My family thought I would die quietly and forgotten. The next morning, I made noise they couldn't escape. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now. Smash that like button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Should Minnie forgive her children? What do you think the new will says? Where are you watching from? Thursday morning at 9 a.m., my lawyer Opal Green sent certified copies of my new will to each of my 3 children, Curtis at his law office, Geneva at her medical practice, and Porter at his accounting firm. By 9:30 a.m., my hospital room phone started ringing. The first call was from Curtis. I could hear the fury in his voice before he even said hello. "What the hell is this?" Curtis shouted. "Mom, I just received a copy of a will that says you're leaving everything to charity. Everything. This has to be a mistake." "It's not a mistake," I said calmly. "That's my new will. I had it written 3 months ago." "You can't do this," Curtis yelled. "That money is our inheritance. We've been counting on it. You can't just give away $1.2 million to strangers." "I can do whatever I want with my money," I said. "It's mine. And I've decided that since my children don't think I'm worth saving, they don't deserve to inherit anything from me." "This is because we won't pay for your transplant?" Curtis asked incredulously. "Mom, we're being practical. You're being vindictive." "No," I said. "I'm being fair. You told me last night that you won't spend your inheritance on keeping me alive. Well, it's not your inheritance anymore. I've left everything to organizations that actually help people. Cancer research, children's hospitals, homeless shelters, people who deserve help and can't afford it. Unlike my children, who have plenty of money but won't lift a finger to save their own mother." "You're insane," Curtis shouted. "I'm going to challenge this will. I'm a lawyer. I know how to fight this." Go ahead and try, I said. Opal Green made sure the will is airtight. I was evaluated by 2 doctors who certified I was of sound mind when I signed it. You won't win. Curtis hung up on me. 5 minutes later, Geneva called. She was crying. Mom, please tell me this will isn't real, Geneva sobbed. Please tell me this is just a scare tactic to make us feel guilty. It's real, I said, every word. But Mom, we were counting on that money, Geneva cried. We have plans. Porter wants to buy a bigger house. Curtis wants to send his kids to private school. I wanted to open my own practice. We need that inheritance. You should have thought about that before you told me I wasn't worth saving, I said coldly. We didn't mean it like that, Geneva protested. We were just being realistic about your age and the cost of the surgery. We didn't mean we wanted you to die. Yes, you did, I said. Porter literally said you couldn't spend your inheritance on keeping me alive. Curtis said $450,000 was too much money to spend on someone my age. You said I should just let nature take its course. You all made it very clear. You'd rather have the money than have me. That's not fair, Geneva said. You're twisting our words. I'm repeating your words exactly, I said. And now you know the consequences. You get nothing, not 1 penny. Everything goes to charity. Mom, please, Geneva begged. We can work this out. We'll help you get the transplant. We'll find the money somewhere. Just please don't do this. Now you want to help, I asked. Now that you know there's no inheritance, suddenly you're willing to save my life. It's too late, Geneva. I know what you really care about, and it's not me. I hung up. Porter called 10 minutes later. Unlike Curtis's fury or Geneva's tears, Porter was coldly calculating. Mom, let's talk about this rationally, Porter said in his accountant voice. You're upset because we were honest about the financial realities of your medical situation, but you're making a rash decision that you're going to regret. I won't regret it, I said. Think about your grandchildren, Porter continued. You're punishing them for our mistakes. That inheritance could pay for their college educations, help them buy their first homes, give them financial security. Are you really going to take that away from them because you're angry at us? My grandchildren have parents who can provide for them, I said. Parents with good jobs and comfortable incomes. They don't need my money. But there are children out there whose parents can't afford cancer treatment. There are families living in their cars because they can't afford rent. There are people who actually need help. That's where my money is going. This is emotional blackmail, Porter said. You're trying to manipulate us into agreeing to pay for your transplant by threatening to disinherit us. No, I corrected. I already disinherited you 3 months ago. This isn't a threat, it's done. The will is signed and filed. You get nothing whether I live or die. We'll see about that, Porter said coldly. We're going to fight this will. We'll prove you were mentally incompetent when you signed it. We'll prove Opal Green manipulated you into changing it. We'll tie this up in court for years if we have to. You do that, I said. Spend your own money on lawyer fees trying to get my money. See how that works out for you. Porter hung up. I lay back in my hospital bed, exhausted but satisfied. My children had reacted exactly as I'd expected, with outrage, tears, and threats. But not one of them had said, Mom, I'm sorry, you're right. We were wrong to value money over your life. Not one of them had said they loved me. They only cared about the inheritance they just lost. At 2 p.m. that afternoon, all 3 of my children showed up at my hospital room together. They'd clearly been talking to each other, coordinating their approach. Curtis stood at the foot of my bed like he was addressing a jury. Geneva sat in the chair next to me, trying to look sympathetic. Porter stood by the window with his arms crossed, watching me with cold calculation. Mom, we've been discussing the situation, Curtis began in his lawyer voice, and we've come to some conclusions. Have you? I asked. First, we want to apologize, Curtis continued. We handled the conversation about your transplant badly. We were insensitive. We shouldn't have talked about money at all. We should have focused on what's best for your health. I said nothing. I could see this was a rehearsed speech. Second, Curtis went on, We want you to know that we do care about you. You're our mother. We love you. And if you want to pursue the transplant, we'll support that decision. Will you pay for it? I asked bluntly. Curtis hesitated. We'll help. We can't cover the full $450,000, but we can contribute something. And we'll help you explore other options, medical loans, fundraising, insurance appeals. So that's a no, I said. You still won't pay for the transplant. We can't afford it, Mom. Geneva burst out. You're asking us to spend money we don't have. You have money, I said. You all have good incomes, nice houses, savings accounts. You just don't want to spend that money on me. Because it's not just about you, Porter said, his cold mask slipping. It's about our families, our children, our futures. We can't sacrifice everything for a transplant that might not even work. But you expect me to sacrifice everything, I said. You expect me to just die quietly so you can inherit my money without any inconvenience. That's not what we want, Geneva cried. Then what do you want? I asked. Tell me the truth. What are you really here for? My 3 children looked at each other. Finally, Curtis spoke. We want you to change your will back, he said. We want you to restore our inheritance. There it was, the real reason for this visit. Not love, not concern for my health, just money. And in exchange, I asked, what are you offering me? We'll be better children, Geneva said earnestly. We'll visit more, we'll call more, we'll include you in our lives, we'll make sure you're not lonely. You'll buy my love with visits and phone calls, I asked. That's your offer. We're offering you a relationship with your family, Porter said. Isn't that what you want, to not die alone and forgotten? I looked at my 3 children, the Bobbies I'd raised, the adults they'd become, and I realized something. They still didn't understand. They still thought this was about them doing me a favor by spending time with me. They still thought they could negotiate their way back into my will. They didn't understand that they'd already lost. No, I said simply. No, Curtis repeated. Mom, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, I interrupted. You're offering me fake affection in exchange for $1.2 million. That's not reasonable, that's pathetic. The answer is no. The will stands. You get nothing. Mom, please, Geneva started. Get out, I said. All of you, I'm tired and I don't want to see you anymore. We're your children, Porter said angrily. You can't just cut us out of your life. Watch me, I said. Get out now, or I'll call the nurse and have you removed. They left, but I knew they weren't giving up. They were going to fight this. They were going to try every legal trick they could think of to overturn my will and get their hands on my money. But what they didn't know was that I had one more surprise for them. Something that would make it impossible for them to challenge my will, no matter how hard they tried. That evening, I called Opal Green again. Opal, I need you to do something else for me, I said. I need you to contact the media. The media, Opal repeated, surprised. Why? Because I want my story told, I explained. I want everyone to know what my children did. I want the whole city to know that Curtis Martinez, Geneva Martinez, and Porter Martinez refused to help their dying mother because they were more concerned about their inheritance. Mrs. Washington, are you sure? Opal asked. Going public with this will humiliate your children. It could destroy their reputations and careers. Good, I said. They were willing to let me die to preserve their inheritance. Now I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of people they are. This is going to cause a lot of pain, Opal warned. They caused me pain first, I said. Now it's their turn. Opal was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Okay, I'll contact the local news stations. This is definitely a story they'll want to cover. Dying mother disinherits children who refuse to donate kidneys or pay for transplant. It's got everything. Family drama, medical crisis, inheritance dispute. This will be big news. Perfect, I said. Set it up for tomorrow. I want to do the interview while I'm still alive and coherent. I want to tell my story in my own words. The next morning, Friday, a reporter and camera crew from the local news station came to my hospital room. The reporter was a young woman named Ruthie Chen, who specialized in human interest stories. "Mrs. Washington, thank you for agreeing to speak with us," Ruthie said as the cameraman set up. "I understand you have quite a story to tell." "I do," I said, "and I want to make sure it's told correctly while I'm still here to tell it." The interview took an hour. I told Ruthie everything about raising my 3 children alone after my husband died, working 2 jobs to put them through college, the inheritance from my mother, my kidney disease diagnosis, my children refusing to donate kidneys or help pay for a transplant, the conversation where they told me I wasn't worth $450,000 because they needed to preserve their inheritance. I showed Ruthie the new will, leaving everything to charity. I explained that I'd changed the will 3 months ago, before I even went to the hospital, because I'd already seen how my children viewed me, as a bank account, not a mother. "My children think I'm going to die quietly and be forgotten," I told the camera. "But I'm not going quiet. I'm making noise. I'm making sure everyone knows what they did. I'm making sure that when I die, people remember me as the mother who was abandoned by her children, not as some old woman who just faded away." "What do you want people to know about your children?" Ruthie asked. I looked directly into the camera. "I want people to know that Curtis Martinez is a lawyer who values money over his own mother's life. I want people to know that Geneva Martinez is a doctor who took an oath to save lives, but wouldn't lift a finger to save mine. I want people to know that Porter Martinez is an accountant who sees his dying mother as a line item on a balance sheet, not as a human being." "That's very harsh," Ruthie observed. "It's the truth," I said, "and they deserve to have the truth told about them." The interview aired on the Friday evening news. The story went viral. By Friday night, my story was everywhere. The local news had picked it up, then the regional news. Then national news outlets started calling. Social media exploded with outrage. 3 successful adult children refuse to help dying mother get kidney transplant because they want to preserve inheritance was trending on Twitter. People were furious. They tracked down my children's workplaces and started leaving 1-star reviews and angry comments. Curtis's law firm received hundreds of calls and emails from people saying they'd never hire a lawyer who'd let his own mother die for money. Geneva's medical practice was flooded with messages from patients saying they were switching doctors because they didn't want to be treated by someone so heartless. Porter's accounting firm issued a statement saying they were reviewing the situation and taking the allegations very seriously. My phone started ringing constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Strangers wanted to offer support. A few people even offered to donate kidneys to me if I'd get tested to see if we were matches. But the most interesting calls came from people offering to pay for my transplant. A wealthy philanthropist named Theodore Brooks called my hospital room directly. "Mrs. Washington, I saw your story on the news," he said. "I want to pay for your kidney transplant. All of it, the donor search, the surgery, the recovery, everything. No strings attached." I was stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because I lost my own mother to kidney disease 10 years ago," Theodore explained. "We couldn't afford a transplant, and she died waiting for a donor. When I saw your story, how your own children refused to help you when they had the means, it broke my heart. I'm wealthy now. I can afford to help, and I want to make sure you don't die the way my mother did." "I don't know what to say," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Say yes," Theodore said. "Let me help you. You deserve to live, Mrs. Washington, and your children deserve to see that strangers care more about you than they do." I said yes. Within 24 hours, Theodore had paid $450,000 to the hospital to cover my transplant surgery. A donor kidney had been located through a medical matching service that specialized in pairing donors with recipients for a fee. Everything was arranged. I was going to live. And my children were going to have to watch me survive with help from a stranger, while they'd refuse to help at all. Saturday morning, all 3 of my children showed up at my hospital room again. They'd seen the news coverage. They knew about Theodore Brooks paying for my transplant. "Mom, this has gotten completely out of hand," Curtis said. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes. The news coverage is destroying our lives. Do you have any idea what you've done to us? I told the truth, I said. That's all. You destroyed our reputations, Geneva said. She'd been crying, her eyes were red and puffy. I've lost a third of my patients in 2 days. People are calling me a monster. My own colleagues are avoiding me. My career is ruined. Maybe you should have thought about that before you refused to donate a kidney to your dying mother, I said. That was a private family matter, Porter shouted. You had no right to take it public. Now my firm is doing a full ethics review because clients are threatening to pull their accounts. I might get fired, Mom. Is that what you wanted? What I wanted was for my children to care whether I lived or died, I said. What I wanted was for you to value my life more than money. But you didn't. So now the whole world knows what you did. And yes, I wanted that. You're vindictive and cruel, Curtis said. You're punishing us for being honest about a difficult situation. No, I corrected. I'm holding you accountable for abandoning your mother when she needed you most. There's a difference. We're your children, Geneva cried. We shouldn't have to donate kidneys or spend hundreds of thousands of dollars just to prove we love you. You're right, I said. You shouldn't have to. Children who actually love their parents would do those things willingly, without resentment. The fact that you see it as a burden proves you don't really love me. You love my money. That's not true, Porter said. Then why did you come here today? I asked. Why are you in my hospital room right now? Is it because you're worried about my health? Or is it because you're worried about your reputations and your careers and the inheritance you lost? My 3 children looked at each other. No one answered. That's what I thought, I said. You're here because my story going public has caused you problems. You're here to try to convince me to recant, to say I exaggerated, to make the story go away so your lives can go back to normal. You're not here because you care about me. Of course we care about you, Geneva said weakly. Prove it, I said. Right now, prove you care about me and not about money or reputation. Tell me you're happy I'm getting the transplant. Tell me you're glad Theodore Brooks helped me when you wouldn't. Tell me you're relieved I'm going to survive. Silence. Finally, Curtis spoke. Mom, this isn't fair. You're putting us in an impossible position. I'm asking you if you're happy I'm going to live, I said. If you can't even say yes to that, then you've proven my point. More silence. Then Porter said something that shocked even me. Honestly, no, I'm not happy. Because now you're going to live long enough to spend your entire inheritance on yourself, and we're going to end up with nothing anyway. So what was the point of any of this? Geneva gasped, Porter. But Porter didn't back down. What? You're both thinking it. We're going to lose the inheritance either way. Either she dies and it goes to charity, or she lives and spends it all on herself. We can't win. So no, I'm not happy she's getting the transplant. I'm angry that a stranger gets to be the hero while we look like villains, and we still end up with nothing. I looked at my youngest son, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the toddler I'd comforted through nightmares, the young man I'd helped through college. And I realized he'd just confirmed everything I'd suspected about all 3 of my children. They didn't love me. They loved my money, and they resented me for not dying quickly so they could inherit it. Get out, I said quietly. All 3 of you, get out and don't come back. You're not welcome here anymore. Mom, Geneva started. I said get out, I screamed. You want to know if this is fair? You want to know if I'm being too harsh? I'll tell you what's not fair, working 2 jobs for 15 years to raise you alone, sacrificing everything to put you through college, spending my whole life making sure you had everything you needed. And then, when I finally needed something from you, when I needed you to save my life, you told me I wasn't worth it. You told me you'd rather have the money. I was crying now, but I didn't care. So yes, I'm taking away your inheritance. Yes, I went public with what you did. Yes, I'm making your lives difficult, because you deserve it. You deserve to lose everything the way I'm losing my life. And I hope you think about this every single day for the rest of your lives. How you abandoned your mother when she was dying because you cared more about money than you cared about her. My children left without another word. Sunday morning, Curtis showed up at my hospital room alone. He looked different, defeated, broken. He sat in the chair next to my bed without saying anything for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, I need to tell you something." "What?" I asked coldly. "I went back through my files yesterday," Curtis said. "I pulled out the copy of your old will, the one you wrote 15 years ago, the one that left everything to the three of us equally. I wanted to see if there was any legal basis for challenging the new will." "And?" I asked. "And I found something," Curtis said. "A letter. You'd written a letter to be opened with the will when you died. I opened it." "You opened a letter that was supposed to be read after my death?" I asked. "Yes," Curtis admitted, "and I need to know. Did you mean what you wrote?" "What did the letter say?" I asked. Curtis pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. His hands were shaking. It said, "To my beloved children, I hope you know how much I loved you. Every sacrifice I made was worth it to see you grow into successful, happy adults. I'm so proud of the people you've become. I hope my inheritance helps you build the futures you deserve. Love always, Mom." Curtis looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "You wrote that 15 years ago, back when you still thought we deserved your money, back when you still believed we loved you. What changed, Mom? When did you realize we'd become people who'd value money over your life?" I looked at my oldest son and decided to tell him the truth. "It was gradual," I said. "It wasn't one moment. It was years of phone calls you didn't return, years of holidays where you seemed annoyed to be there, years of me trying to be part of your life and you treating me like an obligation. But I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until I was diagnosed with kidney disease and asked you to donate. Do you remember what you said?" Curtis nodded miserably. "You said, 'I have a family to think about. I can't take that risk,'" I recited. "And that's when I knew you didn't see me as family anymore. Your wife and kids were your family. I was just your mother, an obligation, someone you'd inherit from someday but didn't want to be bothered with now." "I'm sorry," Curtis whispered. "Are you?" I asked. "Are you sorry for how you treated me, or are you sorry that there are consequences now?" Curtis didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, "Both. I'm sorry for both." "It's too late," I said. "The will is final. The interview is done. Your reputations are destroyed. And in a week, I'm getting a transplant that a stranger paid for because my own children wouldn't help me. There's no going back from this, Curtis." "I know," Curtis said. He stood up to leave. But at the door, he turned back. "For what it's worth, Mom, I'm glad you're getting the transplant. I'm glad you're going to live, not because of the money, not because of my reputation, but because you're my mother. And despite everything, I do love you. I just forgot how to show it." "You forgot how to show it," I repeated. "Curtis, love isn't something you forget. It's something you do. And you chose not to do it. You chose money over me. You chose comfort over helping me. You can say you love me all you want, but your actions proved otherwise." Curtis left without responding. And I lay in my hospital bed wondering if I'd done the right thing. I'd destroyed my children's lives. I'd taken away their inheritance. I'd humiliated them publicly. I'd made sure they'd never forget what they'd done to me. But I'd also made sure I wouldn't die quietly and forgotten. I'd made noise they couldn't escape. And there was still one more thing I needed to do to make sure that noise echoed for the rest of their lives. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now. Smash that like button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Did Minnie go too far? Should she forgive her children? Where are you watching from? The kidney transplant was scheduled for Tuesday morning, just 4 days after my story went viral. The speed was remarkable, but Theodore Brooks had paid extra to expedite everything. He'd located a donor kidney through a legal international matching service, arranged for it to be transported to our hospital, and assembled the best surgical team money could buy. Monday evening, the night before my surgery, I had several visitors. The first was Theodore Brooks himself. He was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s with kind eyes and a gentle manner. "Mrs. Washington, I wanted to meet you in person before the surgery," Theodore said, sitting in the chair beside my hospital bed. I wanted you to know that helping you isn't charity. It's an honor." "Why?" I asked. "You don't even know me." "Because my mother died alone and forgotten," Theodore said quietly. "She had kidney disease just like you. We couldn't afford a transplant. She went on dialysis for 3 years, and I watched her slowly deteriorate. She died in a nursing home with none of her children by her side. We were all too busy with our own lives to visit regularly." "I'm so sorry," I said. "After she died, I found her journals," Theodore continued. She'd written about how lonely she was, how she felt abandoned by her children, how she wished we'd cared more about her than about our own convenience. Reading those journals was the most painful thing I've ever experienced. I realized I'd failed my mother. I'd let her die alone because I was too wrapped up in my own life to notice how much she needed me. "You were busy," I said. "That's different from what my children did." "Is it?" Theodore asked. "Your children told themselves they were being practical about money. I told myself I was being practical about time. We both abandoned our mothers for selfish reasons. The only difference is that I didn't realize what I'd done until it was too late. Your children still have a chance to realize it while you're alive." "They won't," I said bitterly. "They only care about the money." "Maybe," Theodore said. "But Mrs. Washington, I need you to understand something. When I pay for your transplant tomorrow, I'm not doing it to punish your children. I'm doing it because you deserve to live. You deserve to have someone care about you, even if that someone is a stranger. And I'm doing it because I couldn't save my own mother, but I can save you. That matters to me more than anything." Theodore stayed for an hour, talking about his mother, his regrets, his hopes that my surgery would be successful. When he left, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. At 8 p.m., there was a knock on my hospital room door. I expected it to be a nurse, but instead, my daughter Geneva walked in. She looked terrible. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her eyes were red from crying, and she was wearing rumpled scrubs from work. She stood in the doorway looking uncertain. "Mom, can I come in?" Geneva asked quietly. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. "I want to talk to you," Geneva said. "Please, just 5 minutes." I gestured to the chair. Geneva sat down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking since the news story came out," Geneva began. "And I need to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago." "What?" I asked. "The reason I became a doctor," Geneva said, "was because of you." I stared at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Do you remember when I was 16 and I got appendicitis?" Geneva asked. "We didn't have health insurance because you just lost your job at the law firm. You couldn't afford to take me to the hospital right away, so you tried to treat it at home with over-the-counter pain medication." I remembered. It had been one of the worst nights of my life, watching my teenage daughter writhing in pain, knowing something was seriously wrong, but not having money for an emergency room visit. "By the time you scraped together enough money to take me to the ER, my appendix had ruptured," Geneva continued. "I almost died. I spent a week in the hospital, and the whole time I watched you sit by my bedside, crying because you felt guilty that you couldn't afford to get me help sooner." "I remember," I said quietly. "That's when I decided to become a doctor," Geneva said. "I wanted to make sure that no parent would ever have to choose between their child's health and their bank account the way you had to. I wanted to be the kind of doctor who would treat people regardless of their ability to pay." "So what happened?" I asked. "Because you're not that kind of doctor, Geneva. You have a private practice that only takes patients with excellent insurance. You charge premium rates. You're exactly the kind of doctor who makes people choose between their health and their money." Geneva flinched. "You're right. Somewhere along the way, I forgot why I became a doctor. I got caught up in building a successful practice, making money, living comfortably. I forgot about that 16-year-old girl in the hospital bed who vowed to help people the way she wished someone had helped her mother." "And now?" I asked. "And now I'm ashamed," Geneva said, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, when you asked me to donate a kidney, my first thought wasn't about my career. It was about how scared I was. I was terrified of surgery, of complications, of what might go wrong. So I hid behind excuses about my career and my surgical skills. But the truth is, I was just scared and selfish. You were scared, I repeated. Geneva, I'm dying. I'm the one who should be scared. You were worried about a routine donation surgery with a less than 1% complication rate. I'm worried about dying. I know, Geneva whispered. And I hate myself for it. Mom, I've spent the past 3 days thinking about what I've become. The news coverage, the public backlash, losing patients, it all made me realize something. I'm not the person I thought I was. I thought I was a good doctor, a good daughter, a good person. But I'm not. I'm selfish and greedy, and I forgot the most important person in my life, you. Is this your way of asking me to change my will back? I asked. No, Geneva said. Mom, I know it's too late for that. I know you'll never forgive me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I realize what I did was wrong, and I wanted to tell you something else. What? I asked. Geneva pulled an envelope out of her purse and handed it to me. This is a check for $150,000. It's every penny I have in my savings account. I know Theodore Brooks already paid for your transplant, but I want you to have this money anyway. Use it for your recovery, for medical expenses, for whatever you need. I should have given you this money when you first asked. I should have been willing to donate my kidney. I should have put you first. I didn't. But I'm giving you this now, not because I want anything in return, but because it's what I should have done from the beginning. I stared at the check. $150,000, Geneva's entire savings. Why now? I asked. Why are you doing this now after everything that's happened? Because tomorrow you're having surgery, Geneva said. And there's a chance you might not survive it. Transplant surgery is risky, especially at your age. And I realized that if you died tomorrow without me ever apologizing, without me ever trying to make things right, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. I'd be just like Theodore Brooks, realizing too late that I'd failed my mother. So this is about easing your guilt, I asked. Maybe, Geneva admitted. But it's also about doing the right thing even if it's too late. Mom, I love you. I know I did a terrible job of showing it. I know I prioritized money over your life. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I do love you. And I'm so sorry for everything. Geneva stood up to leave. At the door, she turned back. Good luck tomorrow, Mom. I'll be praying for you. After she left, I sat holding the check for a long time, feeling confused and conflicted. Was Geneva's apology genuine? Or was it just another manipulation, another attempt to get back into my good graces and eventually into my will? I didn't know, but I took the check and put it in my bedside drawer. I'd decide what to do with it later if I survived the surgery. Tuesday morning at 6 a.m., the nurses came to prepare me for surgery. They gave me medications, started an IV, went through all the pre-surgery procedures. At 7 a.m., my surgical team came to talk to me. The lead surgeon was Dr. Raymond Foster, one of the best transplant surgeons in the country. Theodore Brooks had insisted on bringing him in for my surgery. Mrs. Washington, I want to go over what's going to happen today, Dr. Foster said. The surgery will take approximately 4 to 6 hours. We'll remove your damaged kidneys and transplant the donor kidney. The recovery will be significant. You'll be in the hospital for about a week, then several months of monitoring and medication to prevent rejection. What are the risks? I asked. The main risks are infection, bleeding, and organ rejection, Dr. Foster explained. At your age, there's also increased risk of complications from anesthesia. I won't lie to you, this surgery is serious and there are real risks. But you have a good chance of success. The donor kidney is an excellent match. You're otherwise healthy despite the kidney failure, and you have the best surgical team available. And if I don't have the surgery? I asked. You'll die within 3 to 6 months, Dr. Foster said bluntly. The dialysis is keeping you alive, but your body is deteriorating. Without a transplant, you won't make it to the end of the year. Then let's do the surgery, I said. At 7:30 a.m., as they were wheeling me toward the operating room, I was surprised to see Curtis, Geneva, and Porter standing in the hallway outside the surgical wing. Mom, Curtis called out. The orderly stopped my gurney. My 3 children walked over to me. They all looked exhausted and worried. "We wanted to be here before your surgery," Curtis said. "We wanted to tell you we're sorry for everything, and we hope the surgery is successful." "Are you here because you actually care?" I asked. "Or because you're worried about how it will look in the media if you're not here?" My children looked at each other. Porter spoke. "Both, probably. I won't lie to you, Mom. We're here partly because we know people are watching. But we're also here because despite everything that's happened, you're still our mother, and we don't want you to die. Even though it means I'll live long enough to spend your inheritance," I asked, throwing Porter's own words back at him. Porter flinched. "I shouldn't have said that. I was angry and stupid. Mom, I don't want you to die, not for money. Not for any reason. I want you to live. And I'm sorry it took a stranger paying for your surgery for me to realize that." I looked at my 3 children, the adults I'd raised, who'd hurt me so deeply, who'd valued money over my life. And I realized something: they were still my children. Despite everything, I still loved them, even though they'd broken my heart. "If I survive this surgery," I said, "we need to have a serious conversation about our relationship, about what you did and why it was wrong, about how things need to change going forward. Do you understand?" All 3 of them nodded. "Good," I said. "Now get out of here. I have a surgery to survive." As they wheeled me into the operating room, I caught a glimpse of my children standing in the hallway watching me go. And for the first time in months, I saw something in their faces that looked like genuine concern. Maybe there was hope for them after all. I don't remember anything about the surgery itself. One moment, I was in the operating room watching the anesthesiologist prepare the medication, and the next moment, I was waking up in the recovery room with a tube down my throat and machines beeping all around me. A nurse saw I was awake. "Mrs. Washington, the surgery is over. Everything went well. Dr. Foster will be in to see you soon." The tube was removed from my throat. My chest hurt, my abdomen hurt, everything hurt, but I was alive. Dr. Foster came in an hour later. "Mrs. Washington, the surgery was a complete success," he said, smiling. "The donor kidney is functioning perfectly. Your body is already responding well to it. If you continue to recover at this rate, you'll be out of the ICU by tomorrow and out of the hospital by next week." "So I'm going to live?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Yes," Dr. Foster said. "You're going to live." I started crying. After 6 months of thinking I was going to die, after my children told me I wasn't worth saving, after feeling abandoned and alone, I was going to live. A stranger had saved my life, when my own children wouldn't. Wednesday afternoon, I was moved from the ICU to a regular hospital room. I was still in pain, still weak, but I was recovering. That afternoon, Theodore Brooks visited me. "Mrs. Washington, I heard the surgery was successful," Theodore said, looking genuinely happy. "I'm so glad." "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for saving my life. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't need to repay me," Theodore said. "Seeing you alive and recovering is payment enough. Mrs. Washington, I need to tell you something. When I decided to pay for your surgery, I did it for my mother's memory. But over the past few days, I've gotten to know your story. And I've realized something: you're not just a news story or a cause to support. You're a person who deserves dignity and respect and care, and I'm honored to have helped you." "You're a good man," I said. "I'm trying to be," Theodore said. "Mrs. Washington, I know your relationship with your children is complicated, but I want you to know they've been here, all 3 of them. They've been in the waiting room since before your surgery started. They were here all through the 6-hour operation. They've been here every day asking about your recovery." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Really," Theodore confirmed. "I talked to them yesterday. They're devastated by what they did to you. They know they were wrong, and they're trying to figure out how to make it right." "It might be too late," I said. "Maybe," Theodore said. "But Mrs. Washington, I learned the hard way that it's never too late to try. My mother is gone. I can never apologize to her, never make things right with her. But your children still have a chance, and I think you should at least hear what they have to say." "I'll think about it," I said. After Theodore left, I lay in my hospital bed thinking. My children had been here during my surgery. They'd been waiting to hear if I survived. That meant something, didn't it? Or was it just more manipulation? More attempts to get back into my good graces so they could eventually get back into my will? I didn't know, but I decided I'd find out. Thursday morning, I called Curtis and told him I wanted to see all 3 of my children that afternoon. They arrived at 2 p.m., Curtis, Geneva, and Porter, all looking nervous. "Sit down," I said. "We need to talk." They sat in chairs around my hospital bed. "Theodore told me you've been here every day since my surgery," I began. "Why?" "Because we were worried about you," Curtis said. "We wanted to make sure you survived." "Why?" I pressed. "Why do you care if I survive? A week ago, you told me I wasn't worth $450,000. You told me you'd rather preserve your inheritance than save my life. So why the sudden concern?" Geneva spoke up. "Because we realized we were wrong. Mom, seeing you on the news, hearing strangers talk about how horrible we are, losing patients and clients and facing professional consequences, it made us take a hard look at ourselves. And we didn't like what we saw." "So you're here because of the public backlash?" I asked. "Because your reputations were damaged?" "That was part of it at first," Porter admitted. "But then we actually thought about what we'd done. We thought about how you raised us alone, how you worked 2 jobs to put us through college, how you sacrificed everything for us. And we realized that when you finally needed something from us, we said no. We valued money, money we hadn't even earned, just money we expected to inherit over your life." "Yes, you did," I said. "And that hurt me more than anything else in my life, more than your father dying, more than years of working 2 jobs, more than being lonely. You, my own children, told me I wasn't worth saving." "We know," Curtis said quietly. "And we're sorry. We know sorry isn't enough. We know we destroyed your trust. We know you changed your will and you're probably never going to change it back. We know we lost any right to your inheritance. But Mom, we need you to know, we don't care about the money anymore. We care about you." "Do you?" I asked. "Or are you just saying that because a stranger paid for my surgery and now you realize you can't manipulate me with money anymore?" "We're saying it because it's true," Geneva said. "Mom, I gave you $150,000 on Monday. That's every penny of my savings. I didn't do it to get back into your will. I did it because I realized money doesn't matter. You matter. And I should have given you that money when you first asked, without hesitation, without resentment." "Curtis and I talked after Geneva did that," Porter said. "And we realized she was right. So Curtis liquidated his investment portfolio and I sold some stocks. We each have $150,000 to give you as well. That's $450,000 total, the exact cost of the transplant surgery. We know Theodore already paid for it, but we want you to have this money anyway. For your recovery. For your future. For whatever you need." Curtis pulled out 3 envelopes and placed them on my bedside table. "These are checks, $150,000 from each of us. Mom, we know this doesn't make up for what we did. We know we should have given you this money 6 months ago when you were first diagnosed. But we're giving it now because we want you to know that we're serious. We're not asking you to change your will. We're not asking for forgiveness. We're just trying to show you that we understand we were wrong." I stared at the 3 envelopes. $450,000. My children had liquidated their savings to give me the exact amount they'd refused to pay for my transplant. "Why now?" I asked. "Why are you doing this now?" "Because we almost lost you," Geneva said, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, when you went into surgery on Tuesday, we didn't know if you'd survive. We sat in that waiting room for 6 hours, and all we could think about was what if you died? What if you died and the last conversation we had with you was us telling you that you weren't worth saving? We'd have to live with that for the rest of our lives." "And we realized something," Curtis added. "We realized that if you died, we'd inherit nothing, you'd left everything to charity. But more than that, we'd lose our mother. And that loss would be so much worse than losing any amount of money, because money can be replaced. But we only have one mother. And we almost lost you because we were too stupid to realize that. So we're giving you this money," Porter said. "Not because we want anything in return, but because we want you to know that we finally understand. You are more important than money. Your life is more valuable than any inheritance, and we're sorry it took us this long to figure that out." I looked at my 3 children. They looked sincere. They looked genuinely remorseful, but I'd been hurt too deeply to just accept their apologies without question. "I need time," I said. "I need time to think about this. I need time to decide if I believe you're really sorry or if this is just more manipulation. Leave the checks if you want, but I need you to leave now. I'm tired." My children stood up. As they were leaving, Curtis turned back. "Mom, whatever you decide about us, about the money, about your will, we understand. We deserve whatever consequences come from what we did. But please know, we love you. We always loved you. We just forgot how to show it. And we're going to spend the rest of our lives trying to prove that we've learned." After they left, I looked at the 3 envelopes on my bedside table. $450,000. My children had finally done what they should have done 6 months ago. But was it too late? Friday morning, Opal Green came to visit me in the hospital. "Mrs. Washington, I heard the surgery was successful," Opal said. "I'm so happy for you." "Thank you," I said. "Opal, I need your legal advice about something." "Of course," Opal said. "What is it?" I told her about my children's visits, their apologies, and the $450,000 in checks they'd given me. "What do you think?" I asked. "Do you think they're sincere, or is this just another manipulation?" Opal thought for a moment. "Mrs. Washington, I can't tell you what to believe about your children's motivations. Only you can decide that. But I can tell you this. Actions speak louder than words. Your children giving you $450,000, money they liquidated from their own savings, is a significant action. It's not just words or empty promises." "But they should have done this 6 months ago," I said. "You're right, they should have," Opal agreed. "But they didn't. And you can either hold on to that resentment forever, or you can acknowledge that people can change and grow and learn from their mistakes. The question is, do you believe your children have learned?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Then here's my suggestion," Opal said. "Keep the new will as it is for now. Don't change anything. But give your children a chance to prove they've changed. Watch their actions over the next few months. See if they follow through on their promises to be better children. And then, if you believe they're sincere, you can always change your will again." "That's good advice," I said. "There's one more thing," Opal said. "Mrs. Washington, you need to decide something else. What do you want your legacy to be? Do you want to be remembered as the mother who was abandoned by her children and died bitter and alone? Or do you want to be remembered as the mother who held her children accountable, taught them a lesson they needed to learn, and then gave them a chance at redemption?" I thought about that for a long time after Opal left. What did I want my legacy to be? I thought I wanted revenge. I thought I wanted my children to suffer the way I'd suffered. I thought I wanted them to lose their inheritance the way I was losing my life. But now that I wasn't losing my life anymore, now that I was going to survive, thanks to Theodore Brooks, what did I really want? I wanted my children to love me. I wanted them to value me more than money. I wanted them to be the kind of people who would sacrifice for their mother the way I'd sacrificed for them. And maybe, just maybe, they were finally becoming those people. That afternoon, I made a decision. I called Curtis, Geneva, and Porter, and asked them to come to my hospital room one more time. When they arrived, I had all 3 envelopes sitting on my bedside table, Geneva's from Monday and the 2 from yesterday. "Sit down," I said. "I've made some decisions and I want you to hear them." My children sat down, looking nervous. "First," I said, "I'm keeping the $450,000 you gave me, not because I need it for medical expenses, Theodore covered those, but because you need to feel the financial sacrifice you should have felt 6 months ago. Consider it your penance." My children nodded. No one objected. "Second," I continued, "my will stays as it is. Everything still goes to charity. I'm not changing that." I saw the disappointment in my children's faces, but again, no one objected. "However," I said, "I'm adding a condition to my will. If at the time of my death I believe that you've genuinely changed, if I believe you've become the kind of children who value family over money, then I'll leave instructions for the charities to share 25% of my estate with you. Not the full amount. You don't deserve that. But 25% split equally among the three of you as a reward for becoming better people. Mom, we don't deserve even that, Curtis said. No, you don't, I agreed. But I'm giving you the opportunity to earn it, not by manipulating me or making empty promises, but by actually being good children, by visiting me regularly, by calling me just to talk, not because you need something, by including me in your lives and your families, by treating me like a person you love, not like a bank account you're waiting to inherit from. We can do that, Geneva said earnestly. Mom, we want to do that. We'll see, I said. You have the rest of my life to prove it. And considering I just got a kidney transplant that should give me another 10 to 15 years, you have plenty of time. What about the public humiliation? Porter asked. The news story destroyed our reputations. Are you going to do anything to fix that? I smiled. Actually, yes. I've already scheduled another interview with Ruthie Chen for next week. I'm going to tell her about how my children gave me $450,000, how they've apologized, and how we're working on rebuilding our relationship. I'm going to make it clear that while what they did was wrong, they're trying to make it right. That should help repair your reputations. Thank you, Curtis said, looking genuinely grateful. Don't thank me yet, I said, because I'm also making it clear in the interview that I've kept my will the same. Everything still goes to charity. I want people to know that you're not being rewarded for your bad behavior. You're being given a chance to earn redemption, but you haven't earned it yet. That's fair, Geneva said. One more thing, I said. I want you to each do something for me. Curtis, I want you to volunteer at a legal aid clinic 1 day a month, providing free legal services to people who can't afford a lawyer. Geneva, I want you to spend 1 day a month at a free clinic, treating patients who can't afford medical care. Porter, I want you to donate your accounting services to a nonprofit organization that helps low-income families with tax preparation. Why? Porter asked. Because I want you to understand what it's like to help people who actually need help, I explained. I want you to see that there are people in this world who are struggling, who can't afford basic necessities, who need help from people with skills and resources. I want you to remember that feeling, so you never again tell your own mother that she's not worth helping. My children agreed to all of it. After they left, I lay in my hospital bed feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. My family had thought I would die quietly and forgotten. Instead, I'd made noise they couldn't escape. I'd exposed their selfishness. I'd destroyed their reputations. I'd taken away their inheritance. And then, when they finally learned their lesson, I'd given them a chance at redemption. I didn't know if they'd take it. I didn't know if they'd really change. But for the first time in a long time, I had hope. And that was enough. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now. Smash that like button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Should Minnie give her children 25%? Have they really changed? Where are you watching from? 2 years after my kidney transplant, I was sitting in my living room. The same living room where my children had told me they wouldn't help save my life, celebrating my 75th birthday. But this birthday was different from any I'd had in years. My living room was full of people who actually cared about me. Curtis was there with his wife Estelle and their 2 teenagers, helping set up decorations. Geneva was in the kitchen with her husband and their 3 young children, preparing food. Porter was outside with his family, setting up tables in the backyard. And sitting in the chair of honor next to me was Theodore Brooks, the man who'd saved my life when my own children wouldn't. Mrs. Washington, you look wonderful, Theodore said, smiling. Hard to believe it's been 2 years since the transplant. I feel wonderful, I said honestly. Better than I have in years. The new kidney is working perfectly. Dr. Foster says I'm healthier now than I was before I got sick. That's because you're happy, Theodore observed. Happiness is good medicine. He was right. I was happy. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely happy. Over the past 2 years, my children had kept every promise they'd made in that hospital room. They'd visited me regularly, not just on holidays, but every week. They'd called me just to chat, to ask how I was doing, to tell me about their lives. They'd included me in family gatherings, asked my advice, treated me like a person they valued, not an obligation they resented. Curtis had volunteered at the legal aid clinic every month for 2 years, providing free legal services to people who couldn't afford lawyers. He told me it had changed his perspective on his work. He'd started taking on more pro bono cases at his own firm, using his skills to help people who truly needed it. Geneva had spent 1 day a month at the free clinic, treating patients who had no insurance and couldn't afford medical care. She'd told me that going back to that kind of work reminded her why she'd become a doctor in the first place. 6 months ago, she'd even restructured her private practice to accept a certain number of low-income patients on a sliding scale. Porter had donated his accounting services to a nonprofit that helped low-income families with tax preparation. He'd discovered he actually enjoyed the work more than his corporate accounting job. He'd recently taken a pay cut to work part-time for the nonprofit permanently. My children had changed, really, truly changed. But there was still one more test I needed to give them. One final way to know if their transformation was genuine or just an elaborate performance to get back into my will. After we'd eaten birthday cake and opened presents, I asked everyone to gather in the living room. I had an announcement to make. First, I want to thank all of you for being here today, I began. 2 years ago, I didn't think I'd live to see this birthday, but thanks to Theodore's generosity and the skill of my medical team, I'm here, and I'm grateful. Theodore smiled modestly. My children looked emotional. I could see Geneva wiping away tears. Over the past 2 years, I've watched my children work hard to rebuild our relationship, I continued. They've kept their promises. They've been present in my life. They've shown me through their actions that they've learned from their mistakes, and I'm proud of the people they've become. Curtis, Geneva, and Porter looked hopeful. I knew what they were thinking. She's going to change her will back. She's going to restore our inheritance. Which is why, I said, I've made a decision about my will. The room went completely silent. Everyone was watching me. 2 years ago, I changed my will to leave everything to charity, I explained. I did that because my children had shown me they valued money over my life. But I also told them that if they proved they'd changed, I'd consider leaving them 25% of my estate. I pulled out an envelope from my pocket. This is my new will. I had it drawn up last week, and I want to read it to you now so there are no surprises later. I opened the envelope and read, I, Minnie Washington, being of sound mind and body, do hereby make the following provisions for my estate. First, to my 3 children, Curtis Martinez, Geneva Martinez, and Porter Martinez, I leave 25% of my estate to be divided equally among them in recognition of the changes they have made and the efforts they have shown to rebuild our relationship. My children looked shocked and happy, but I wasn't done. However, I continued reading, this 25% comes with conditions. Each of my children must continue their volunteer work for at least 5 more years after my death. Curtis must continue at the legal aid clinic. Geneva must continue at the free clinic. Porter must continue at the nonprofit. If any of them stops their volunteer work before 5 years have passed, they forfeit their portion of the inheritance, which will go to charity instead. I looked up at my children. Do you agree to these terms? Without hesitation, all 3 of them nodded. We agree, Curtis said. Mom, we're not doing the volunteer work to get an inheritance. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do, because it's what you taught us, to help people who need help. Good, I said, because there's more. I continued reading from the will. Second, I leave 25% of my estate to Theodore Brooks, in gratitude for his generosity in saving my life when my own children would not. Theodore looked stunned. Mrs. Washington, I can't accept that. You can and you will, I said firmly. Theodore, you saved my life. You gave me 2 more years, and hopefully many more that I wouldn't have had. You deserve to be rewarded for that. But I didn't do it for money, Theodore protested. I know, I said. That's exactly why you deserve it. You helped me when you had nothing to gain from it. That's what real generosity looks like. Theodore's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, he said quietly. And finally, I read, I leave the remaining 50% of my estate to the following charities: the National Kidney Foundation, the American Cancer Society, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and local homeless shelters. These organizations help people who truly need help, who can't afford medical care, who are struggling to survive. They represent the values I want my legacy to embody: compassion, generosity, and care for those who need it most. I folded up the will and looked around the room. That's it. That's my final will. My children get 25%, enough to show that I forgive them and recognize their growth, but not so much that they can coast on inheritance instead of working for what they have. Theodore gets 25% for saving my life, and 50% goes to charity to help others the way I wish I'd been helped. Mom, it's perfect, Geneva said, crying openly now. It's more than we deserve. Yes, it is, I agreed. But I'm giving it to you anyway because I believe you've earned it. Not through manipulation or empty promises, but through 2 years of consistent action. You've shown me that people can change, and that matters more to me than money ever could. 6 months after my birthday, Ruthie Chen contacted me again. She wanted to do a follow-up interview about my story. Mrs. Washington, 2 years ago your story went viral and sparked a national conversation about elder abuse and family obligations, Ruthie said. Now I'd like to do a follow-up. How are things with your children now? We sat in my living room for the interview, and I told Ruthie everything. I told her about my children giving me $450,000, about their 2 years of volunteer work, about how they'd rebuilt our relationship through consistent effort. So you've forgiven them? Ruthie asked. Yes, I said, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means acknowledging that they've learned from their mistakes and grown as people. My children hurt me deeply. They valued money over my life, but they've spent 2 years proving that they understand what they did was wrong and that they're committed to being better people. What would you say to other elderly people who feel abandoned by their families? Ruthie asked. I thought about it carefully. I'd say this: you have the right to demand respect and care from your children. You raised them, sacrificed for them, gave them everything. And if they're treating you like a burden or like a bank account instead of a person, you have the right to hold them accountable. Don't die quietly and be forgotten. Make noise. Demand to be heard. Demand to be valued. But would you recommend taking the extreme steps you took, changing your will, going public with the story? Ruthie asked. That depends, I said. If your children are genuinely struggling and doing their best, then no. Give them grace. But if your children have the means to help you and choose not to because they're more concerned about preserving their inheritance, then yes, hold them accountable. Make it clear that their behavior has consequences. Sometimes the only way people learn is when they lose something they value. Do you regret any of it? Ruthie asked. No, I said honestly. I don't regret changing my will. I don't regret going public with my story. I don't regret making my children face consequences for their actions. Because if I hadn't done those things, my children never would have changed. They'd still be the selfish, greedy people who told their dying mother she wasn't worth saving. But because I held them accountable, they had to take a hard look at themselves. And they didn't like what they saw, so they changed. That's a powerful message, Ruthie said. It's the truth, I said. My family thought I would die quietly and forgotten. Instead, I made noise they couldn't escape. And that noise, that public accountability, saved not just my life, but my relationship with my children, because it forced them to realize what really matters. The interview aired the following week and once again went viral. But this time, the response was different. People weren't just outraged at my children, they were inspired by the story of redemption and reconciliation. I received hundreds of letters from elderly people who said my story had given them the courage to stand up to family members who were taking advantage of them. I heard from adult children who said my story had made them realize they'd been neglecting their aging parents, and they were working to do better. My story had started a conversation, and that conversation was changing lives. 3 years after my transplant, Theodore Brooks hosted a dinner party at his home. He'd invited me, my 3 children and their families, and several people whose lives had been touched by my story. One of the guests was a woman named Minnie Washington, no relation to me, but she'd reached out after seeing my story on the news. Ruthie was 70 years old and had been diagnosed with kidney failure. Her adult children had refused to help her, just like mine had refused to help me. But after seeing my story and how I'd held my children accountable, Ruthie had done the same thing. She'd changed her will, gone public with her story, and demanded better treatment from her family. And it had worked. Her children had apologized, helped pay for her transplant, and rebuilt their relationship with her. Now, 3 years later, Ruthie was healthy and had a good relationship with her children. "Mrs. Washington, I wanted to thank you in person," Ruthie said to me at the dinner party. "Your story saved my life. If you hadn't had the courage to speak up, I would have died quietly, and my children would have inherited my money without ever learning what they'd done wrong. But because you showed me it was possible to demand accountability, I found my voice, and it changed everything." I hugged Ruthie, feeling tears in my eyes. "I'm so glad," I said. "That's what I hoped would happen. I hoped that by telling my story, other people would find the courage to tell theirs." Throughout the evening, I met other people who'd been inspired by my story. Adult children who'd reconnected with their aging parents. Elderly people who'd stood up to family members who were financially exploiting them. Strangers who'd been moved to donate to kidney disease research or volunteer at senior centers. My noise, the noise I'd made when my family thought I'd die quietly, had echoed far beyond my own life. It had created ripples that touched hundreds, maybe thousands of people. 5 years after my kidney transplant, I was 78 years old and healthier than I'd been in a decade. My new kidney was still functioning perfectly. I'd outlived every doctor's prediction. I was sitting in my backyard on a sunny afternoon, watching my grandchildren play. Curtis's teenagers were now young adults in college. Geneva's children were in middle school. Porter's kids were in elementary school. All of them knew the story of what had happened 5 years ago. My children had told them, honestly and without sugarcoating, about how they'd failed their grandmother and what they'd learned from it. Curtis came and sat down next to me. "Mom, I've been thinking about something," he said. "What's that?" I asked. "5 years ago, when you went public with our story, I thought you were trying to destroy us," Curtis said. "I thought you were being vindictive and cruel, but now I understand you were trying to save us." "Save you from what?" I asked. "From becoming the kind of people who could let their own mother die because they cared more about money than about her," Curtis explained. "If you hadn't held us accountable, we would have gone the rest of our lives thinking what we did was okay. Thinking that being practical about money justified abandoning you when you needed us most. We would have inherited your money, lived comfortable lives, and never realized what we'd lost, not the money, but our souls, our humanity." "I'm glad you understand that now," I said. "We all do," Curtis said. "Mom, Geneva, Porter, and I talk about this a lot, about how close we came to being the kind of people we'd despise. And we're grateful, genuinely grateful, that you didn't let us get away with it. You loved us enough to hold us accountable, and that accountability changed our lives." Geneva and Porter joined us in the backyard. "We were just talking about you," Curtis told them. "Good things, I hope," Geneva said, smiling. "I was telling Mom that we're grateful she held us accountable 5 years ago," Curtis explained. "I second that," Porter said. "Mom, I know we've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what we said to you in that hospital room. I'm sorry for valuing money over your life. And I'm grateful that you didn't let us destroy our relationship with you without a fight." "You're forgiven," I said. "You've been forgiven for years now. You've proven through your actions that you've changed." "But we don't want you to forget what we did," Geneva said. "We don't want you to forget because we never want to forget. We want to remember how badly we failed you so we never fail anyone like that again." My 3 children, who 5 years ago had told me I wasn't worth saving, had become the kind of people I'd always hoped they'd be. Compassionate, generous, humble enough to acknowledge their mistakes and work to be better. And it had all started because I'd refused to die quietly. On my 80th birthday, 7 years after my transplant, I gathered my family together one more time. I had one final announcement to make. "I've made one more change to my will," I told them, "and I want you to hear it from me." My children looked nervous. "What kind of change?" Curtis asked. "I've decided to increase your inheritance from 25% to 40%, I said. My children looked shocked. "Mom, you don't have to do that," Geneva protested. "I know I don't have to," I said, "but I want to. You've spent 7 years proving that you've changed. You've kept up your volunteer work, not just for the required 5 years, but beyond it because you genuinely care about helping people. You've been present in my life, not out of obligation, but because you actually want to spend time with me. You've become the kind of children I always hoped you'd be." "What about the charities?" Porter asked. "Are they getting less?" "No," I said. "The charities are still getting 50%. I'm reducing Theodore's portion from 25% to 10% to make room for your increased share." "I'm fine with that," Theodore said quickly. "Mrs. Washington, I never expected any inheritance from you. Getting anything is more than generous." "I know," I said, "but 10% of my estate is still substantial, Theodore. You'll be well taken care of." "So why are you doing this?" Curtis asked. "Why increase our inheritance?" "Because you've earned it," I said simply. 7 years ago, you hadn't earned anything. You'd only taken from me. But over the past 7 years, you've given back not just to me, but to your communities. You've become people who help others, who use your skills and resources to make the world better, and I want to reward that. But more importantly," I continued, "I want you to know that I trust you now. 7 years ago, I didn't trust you with my inheritance because I thought you just wasted on yourselves. But now I know you won't. I know you'll use at least some of it to continue helping others, and that makes me proud." My children were crying. So was Theodore. "Thank you, Mom," Geneva said through her tears. "Not for the money, but for believing in us, for giving us a chance to become better people, for loving us enough to hold us accountable when we were wrong." "That's what mothers do," I said. "We love our children, and sometimes love means letting them face consequences. Sometimes love means making noise when everyone expects you to be quiet." I'm 82 years old now. It's been 9 years since my kidney transplant. The doctors are amazed at how well I'm doing. Some of them think I might live another 10 years or more. I hope they're right, because I'm not done yet. My story, the story of the mother who made noise when her family expected her to die quietly, has become something bigger than just my personal experience. It's become a movement. Across the country, elderly people are speaking up about elder abuse. They're demanding accountability from family members who take advantage of them. They're refusing to die quietly and forgotten. And families are changing. Adult children are realizing they need to do better. They're spending more time with aging parents. They're helping with medical expenses without resentment. They're treating their parents like people worthy of respect and care, not like burdens or bank accounts. I get letters every week from people telling me how my story changed their lives, how it gave them courage to speak up, how it made them realize they needed to be better children, better parents, better people. My children have become advocates for elder rights. Curtis takes on elder abuse cases pro bono at his law firm. Geneva speaks at medical conferences about the importance of treating elderly patients with dignity and respect. Porter volunteers with organizations that help seniors with financial planning to protect them from exploitation. And Theodore Brooks established a foundation that pays for kidney transplants for elderly patients who can't afford them and whose families won't help. He's saved 17 lives so far. 17 people like me who would have died because their families valued money over their lives. That's my legacy, not the money I'll leave behind. Not the inheritance my children will receive, but the noise I made when everyone expected silence. My family thought I would die quietly and forgotten. Instead, I made noise they couldn't escape. And that noise echoed across the country, inspiring others to find their voices, to demand respect, to refuse to be forgotten. 9 years ago, I was a dying woman whose children had abandoned her. Today, I'm a survivor, an advocate, a symbol of what happens when people refuse to accept being treated as less than they deserve. My children learned their lesson. They became better people, and in the process, they helped me become who I was always meant to be, not just a mother, but a voice for the voiceless, a champion for the forgotten, a reminder that it's never too late to demand to be heard. I don't know how much longer I'll live, but I know this: when I do die, I won't die quietly. I won't die forgotten. I'll die knowing that I made a difference, that I changed lives, that I mattered. And really, what more could anyone ask for than that? This story proves that making noise is better than dying quietly. Accountability can transform relationships. It's never too late for redemption. Real love includes consequences. Family must earn respect, not demand it. Speaking up inspires others to do the same. Legacy is measured by impact, not money. People can change when held accountable. If this story moved you, subscribe for more powerful family justice stories. Smash that like button. Turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Did Minnie's children deserve forgiveness? Would you have made noise or stayed quiet? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, South Africa, Australia, Trinidad, India, Philippines. Remember, if family abandons you, speak up. Don't die quietly. Make noise, demand accountability, change your will if needed, go public if necessary. Hold family to same standards as strangers. You deserve respect regardless of age. Elder abuse is crime. Your voice matters. It's never too late to demand dignity. Making noise can change lives. Your legacy is your choice. Thank you for following Minnie's journey from abandon to advocate.